The hallway camera had no sound, only movement. And at exactly 9:24 p.m., my wife leaned towards someone standing just outside the frame and whispered something I couldn't hear, but I knew the shape of the words. Her lips moved slowly, carefully, like someone repeating something they had practiced before. Move the shares tonight. The security monitor beside my desk hummed softly. The office smelled faintly like warm plastic and dust from machines that had been running all day. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe the camera angle made it look strange. But my stomach tightened anyway. Because in 12 years of marriage, Clara had never once asked about my company's shares. Not once. Not when we crossed $10 million revenue. Not when investors started calling. Not even when the company reached $68 million valuation. Yet there she was, whispering about shares in a hallway she almost never visited. Hi, my name is Daniel Mercer. For the last 14 years, I built a logistics software company from a folding desk and an overheating server into a quiet but very profitable business. And until that moment, I believed the woman standing under that hallway camera was the one person in my life who didn't care about it. Turns out, she did. She just didn't want to talk about it. She wanted to move it. And the strangest part? She thought the hallway camera above her head didn't work anymore. But I knew something she didn't. That camera had been recording every second for the last 3 years. And in that moment, my body already knew something my mind hadn't accepted yet. Something was very wrong. Identity anchor and world build. I met Clara in 2012. She was working 2 architecture jobs, drawing residential designs during lunch breaks and taking freelance projects at night just to keep up with rent. She had ambition. That was what I admired most. 3 years later, we married in a small vineyard ceremony outside Sacramento. 40 guests, cheap wine, a DJ who kept losing the playlist. At the time, my company, Mercer Flow Systems, was barely surviving. 2 employees, 1 rented office, and a product that only 3 warehouses were using. But Clara stayed. She supported the long nights and the stress and the uncertainty. By 2018, Mercer Flow had grown into something real. We were managing logistics software for over 120 distribution companies across the western United States. Money started coming in, not flashy money, but steady money, the kind that builds quietly. Clara never got involved in the business. She said spreadsheets made her eyes hurt. Whenever I tried explaining equity structures or investor agreements, she would laugh and say, "Daniel, I married you, not your company." So I stopped talking about it, and that was probably my first mistake. The second person in this story was Mason Reed, my business partner since 2014. Former finance analyst, quiet guy, sharp mind, the kind of person who always knew where the money was moving before anyone else noticed. We built Mercer Flow together, 50-50 partners on paper, but there was one small detail Mason never noticed. During a company restructuring in 2018, our lawyer added a contingency clause buried deep in the shareholder agreement. Just a paragraph in the appendix. Mason skimmed it, our accountant forgot about it, and Clara never even heard it existed. But I remembered every word. And watching that hallway footage replay on my screen, I realized something important. They believed their plan was happening tonight, but the trap waiting for them had been written 8 years earlier.
The discovery stack. The first clue was almost laughably small. The coffee station. 3 mugs on the drying rack. Mine, Clara's, and a black ceramic mug with a gold rim that I didn't recognize. Layer 1. Small enough to ignore, but it stayed in my mind. Then came Layer 2. At 9:58 p.m., Clara texted me from upstairs. Working late again? Heart emoji. Sweet. Normal. Except the hallway camera showed her whispering to Mason 2 minutes earlier downstairs, which meant the text wasn't a message. It was an alibi. She was creating a timeline before I even asked questions. That was when the tension in my chest started growing. Then came layer 3. At 10:11 p.m., Mason stepped fully into the hallway camera frame holding a silver flash drive. I zoomed in, recognized the company logo on the side. It belonged to our internal shareholder transfer system. Only 2 people had access to that software, me and Mason. My stomach went cold. Just then, someone knocked lightly on my office door. It was Lena, the night cleaning supervisor. She usually never said more than hello. But that night, she leaned close and whispered 5 words. Check the conference room printer. Then she walked away. I went down the hallway and opened the printer tray. A stack of documents sat there, still warm. The top page was a share transfer authorization form, signed digitally by Mason and Clara, authorizing the movement of 37% of Mercerflow shares into a company called CR Holdings, LLC. Timestamp? 9:23 p.m., 1 minute before the whisper. And suddenly, everything made sense. The mug, the text message, the flash drive. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned for weeks, maybe months. And in that moment, I made the most important decision of the entire story. I said nothing. The cold calculation. That night, at 3:10 a.m., when the office building was empty, I installed 3 new cameras, one in the hallway, one inside the conference room, one in the parking garage. Small, silent, invisible. The next morning, I made Clara coffee, kissed her cheek, told her I was planning something special for our anniversary. She smiled, relieved, because guilty people expect anger. Calm confuses them. Meanwhile, Mason kept moving forward. 3 days later, he met with lawyers representing CR Holdings. The parking garage camera caught everything: handshakes, documents, celebration smiles. They believed the transfer was invisible. Technically, it was, unless someone activated the contingency clause. And I waited. 3 weeks, watching, recording, letting them believe they were winning. Then, one quiet morning, I activated the clause. The trap was set.
The bait and trigger. But traps need proof, so I gave them an opportunity. I told Mason I was flying to Denver for a logistics conference, showed him the plane ticket, complained about airport security. On Monday morning at 6:15 a.m., I left the house with a suitcase, drove toward the airport, parked the car, then quietly took a rideshare back to the office. The cameras were already recording. At 9:24 a.m., Mason unlocked my office door. Clara followed. They sat at my desk, inserted the flash drive, opened the share transfer software. Then Mason said the sentence that ended everything. Once we move Daniel's shares, Mercerflow is ours. Clara laughed softly. He'll never see it coming. The cameras recorded every word. Within seconds, the files uploaded to 3 places: my lawyer, my cloud server, and the encrypted drive in my pocket. By the time they finished the transfer, the contingency clause had already converted those shares into worthless restricted stock. The domino sequence. The first domino fell quietly. Mason's corporate card declined at lunch. He thought it was a bank issue. Then his office key card stopped working. Security escorted him to HR, where a termination notice waited. Subject line: violation of shareholder ethics clause. Clara's collapse came an hour later. Her architecture firm received a legal evidence packet: hallway footage, transfer documents, recorded confession. By 4:30 p.m., her access to all projects was suspended. My phone filled with messages, voicemails, texts, panic. Daniel, please call me. This isn't what you think.
We need to talk. I read every message, responded to none. The silent exit. 3 days later, Clara came home. The house was quiet. My car gone. My clothes gone. My office empty. Only one thing remained on the kitchen counter, an red envelope. Inside were divorce papers, printed evidence of the transfer attempt, and a USB drive. On top was a small sticky note, 14 words. You moved the shares, I moved the future. No anger, no explanation, just math. By the time she finished reading, I was already driving north along the coast. Rebuild and philosophical close. 6 months later, I moved into a small apartment near the marina, sold the old house, bought a used truck, started running every morning before work. Merciflow survived, actually grew stronger. Turns out removing betrayal improves business. Mason's career never recovered after the fraud case circulated through investor networks. Clara moved to another state. We never spoke again. But sometimes I still think about that hallway camera, because betrayal rarely arrives loudly. It arrives quietly, a whisper, a text message, an extra mug. And the people who ignore those details are the ones who lose everything. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is just evidence waiting to finish the story. And when the story ends, the only thing left is to keep walking forward.